So we're in chapter 17 of Night of the Spadefoot Toads, and I think some of you may have finished it already, but we are going to do the last couple of lessons, so that's why I asked you to keep the book. So here we are. I'm going to give you an example, an overview of what I want you to do with the words. And so we have treading, exasperated, and skitter. So treading can be found on page 195. All right, so it's right there at the top of the page. It says, "It's always wetter in the spring," the real estate agent says, treading carefully to avoid getting mud on her shiny shoes. So we have some clues here in the sentence. She's saying it's always wetter in the spring. So just without having read the chapter at all, if I'm just looking at that sentence, then I'm thinking, okay, we've had some weather, maybe it's rained. And then the real estate agent says this, and she's treading carefully to avoid getting mud on her shiny shoes. So this is some sort of action I'm getting that she's doing with her feet to avoid getting her shoes dirty. So I'm thinking treading carefully, then that must be some sort of like just walking carefully, stepping, something like that. That's what I would get from that sentence. And so then when you come over to your lines over here, then you need to use treading in a sentence right here, a complete 5th grade level sentence that is stretched and longer than 4 words, and you know this. And you need to use treading in a sentence the way that it is used in the sentence here. So then we can move along to exasperated, and that's on page 199. And we're going to find exasperated right here in the upper portion of this page. So it looks like we're having a conversation with Mrs. Turner and Mrs. Tibbets and Mr. Lindsay. And we have Mrs. Turner stares down at the driveway pavement with a straight mouth, arms folded across her chest. "Thank you, Mr. Lindsay," she says. "We appreciate your time." Mrs. Tibbets blows a short, exasperated burst of air out of her mouth. Her sister-in-law frowns. "Selling the land helps you too, Gloria. Don't make me the bad guy." So when I read this sentence afterwards where her sister-in-law is saying, "Don't make me the bad guy," it sounds like she might be a little frustrated with her sister, Mrs. Tibbets. And so when Mrs. Tibbets blows a short, exasperated burst of air out of her mouth, this is not pleasing to her sister, who says the "don't make me the bad guy" line. So that's telling me that exasperated here, that must be some sort of frustrated. There's a short burst of air coming out of the mouth, and that usually happens when you're giving like a big sigh or something like that. So I'm going to say this sounds sort of frustrated, and that's how I would write my sentence. And then the last is skitter. That's on page 203. So we are with Ben and Ryan and Jenny. It says they are all carrying supplies for the expedition, and Jenny's got her camera slung around her neck. Ryan drops the plastic containers he's carrying, and they skitter across the trail. Ben and Jenny help him pick them up. Okay, so plastic containers, what do I know about them? They don't weigh a lot, and he drops them and they go across the trail in some way, and Ben and Jenny are needing to help him pick them up, so that must mean that they sort of spread out when they fell. So I'm thinking that skitter is like they drop on the ground and then they have moved across the trail in some way. So I would use all of that information to write my sentence about how something skitters in some way, some sort of movement like that. All right. And then we have the write in response to reading, and so you're supposed to reread page 204 and 205 of Night of the Spadefoot Toads. Then you write a narrative paragraph that recounts the scene at the vernal pool from Ryan's or Jenny's perspective. Begin by clearly establishing the situation and characters. Include key ideas and important descriptive details. Write your answer below on a separate sheet of paper or in a new document. So you can write it right here. We're talking about 5 to 7 complete sentences. And back on page 204 and 205, we need to reread through this. So we have, I don't see any pool, says Ryan. I told you, that's what a vernal pool does, says Ben. It dries up. But there's nothing left to find, Ryan says. There's got to be something. Help me look. And Jenny, will you take some pictures of the area? Ben steps carefully out to the middle of the darkened leaves where the pool was and squats down. Ryan starts shoving leaves and dirt aside. I don't see anything, he says. Hey, Ben yells, you've got to be more careful. We don't want to mess everything up. While Jenny snaps pictures, Ryan and Ben work quietly and methodically, sifting through the mud. First, Ben finds a caddisfly casing. Then Ryan shouts, hey, look, a little clamshell. And here's another one. I know, Ben says, it's like there's nothing there, but then you look closely and bam, a whole different world opens up. Within 15 minutes, they fill a couple of containers with snails, clams, and caddisfly shells. Too bad we can't get a spadefoot, says Ryan. They're around here somewhere, says Ben, but they're impossible to find. Just then, something moves in the leaves by his feet. He bends over and pushes the leaves aside. Ben gently places his hand over the creature and picks it up. Is it a spadefoot? Ryan asks. Nope, says Ben, it's a wood frog. Remember the one I brought into school? They use vernal pools too. He opens his hand carefully. Look at it. The three of them peer down at its tan, smooth skin and the dark mask around its eyes. It's cool, Ryan says. Ben looks at the frog. Then he looks at Jenny and Ryan. An idea comes into his head. A great idea. You guys go sit on that rock over there, Ben says, pointing to the boulder by the side of the pool. How come? Ryan asks. Just do it, please. Jenny shakes her head, but she follows Ryan to the rock and clambers up behind him. Jenny, can I use your camera? Ben asks. He takes the camera from her and puts the strap around his neck. One more thing, he says, handing the frog to Jenny. You have to hold this. Hold it up so I can see it. No way! What if it poops on me? Consider yourself blessed. Just take it. I'll hurry. They are laughing as Ben focuses the camera on them. Okay, he says. Jenny, hold the frog a little higher. Both of you guys smile. Ribbit, Ryan says. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Ben clicks the picture. Okay, so for the prompt, just to go back through, you're supposed to write a narrative paragraph that recounts the scene at the vernal pool from Ryan's or Jenny's perspective. So you need to do it. You need to pretend that you're Ryan or pretend that you're Jenny and use I's and me's and my's and re-explain the whole scene that I just read from one of their perspectives. You have to start by establishing the situation so that if we haven't read the book before, we'll know kind of what's happening and also who the characters that you're there with. You need to include key ideas and important descriptive details. So you really need to go back through as you're writing your account and look at those 2 pages and reference them and include as many details as you can. Now this is only needing to be between 5 and 7 complete sentences. And that ought to do it.